Hello, good afternoon. I'm here for some stories for you guys. These stories today are not going to be offline from the same place. They're actually from a book that I got in the mail called Angels on Earth. So I'm going to read some stories out of it for you guys. First, I would like to say that see if you guys could please pray for my niece and nephew, Abby and Jimmy Myers. Today is their dad's birthday, and he passed away a couple years ago from suicide. So if you can please keep them in your prayers today, I'd really appreciate it. He would have been 34 years old today. He was the same age as me, so if you'd please keep them in your prayers, it'd mean a lot to me. Okay, today is April 11th, 2014, and we're going to begin with an underwater adventure. Gifts of love arrive when least expected is the category of these stories in this magazine. My husband Richard felt closest to God when he was near the water. He spent all his free time on the river by our home because the river flowed into the sea. He always looked for dolphins, my favorite animal. Richard was an expert at spotting them. They travel in pods, so when he spied one, we knew there were still more to enjoy. After Richard began treatment for cancer, the two of us took walks on the dock next to the hospital. The water was far too murky to see anything there, but Richard searched for dolphins anyway. "I'm on the lookout," he always said, squeezing my hand. Month after month he looked but never saw our dolphin at the hospital dock. A little more than a year after his diagnosis, Richard passed away. The next morning I woke up alone in our bed. Almost before I was fully conscious and aware of all we'd been through, I heard a voice inside my head, "Go to the water." It didn't even occur to me not to obey. First I drove to the shore near our home, but when I arrived I sensed that I needed to go to the hospital dock instead. When I stepped onto the wooden walkway, I felt Richard's arms around me. I stopped, closed my eyes, and lingered there. I opened my eyes and looked into the water. It was crystal clear. Richard and I had walked there numerous times. The water had never been anything but murky, never clear. But now I could see everything under the surface. Hundreds of tiny mullet fish, catfish, and a very large turtle, a stingray. The farther I walked, the more animals I saw. I reached the other end of the dock, keeping my eyes on the miraculous sight below me. How Richard would have loved it. God, is he in heaven with you now? In the distance, a dolphin jumped out of the river. One lone dolphin. The light from the sun danced off the water as it disappeared into the horizon. Of course Richard was with God. He'd sent a dolphin to show me he was. By D. Hartley, from Cocoa, Florida. And the next story is Heaven's Blue Ribbon. 2 years in a row, my Hershey Cocoa cake took the blue ribbon at a Lutheran county fair. Much of the credit belonged to my husband Mike. He was my official taste tester, helping me perfect my recipes and suggesting what I should try next. "Delicious," he'd say, pressing the last crumb of my latest confection into his mouth. "My wife is the world's best baker." "Oh, you always say that," I'd say as I scrubbed my mixing bowls. Mike was my biggest fan. After Mike died, it was hard to muster up the energy to continue baking, much less compete. With the county fair booming, I sat at the table and looked around my quiet kitchen. Mike would be so disappointed if I didn't at least enter this year's competition. I thought I had all the ingredients for the cocoa cake right in the cupboard. I dug out my measuring cups. Soon I had a bowl of brown batter. But when I tried to preheat the oven, the digital display stayed blank. The oven wouldn't heat. I called my son Bob, who came right over to have a look. "Looks like the thermostat is totally shot," he said. "It's an old oven, Mom. You'll have to buy a whole new appliance." I couldn't believe my rotten luck. If Mike were here, he'd find a way to help, I thought. Out of frustration, I grabbed the oven knob and gave it a hard twist. The digital display flashed. The oven was working. I poured the batter into the pan and popped it in. The rich scent of the warm cocoa filled the kitchen. I did have to buy a new oven like my son had advised, but my old oven won me a third blue ribbon with a little help from heaven, by Bonnie from from Wyoming, Pennsylvania. The next story is Basketball Days. One dreary afternoon, my boyfriend and I stepped into an antique shop to look for vintage advertisements. "Check inside these old magazines," the store owner said, fanning them out on the counter. I grabbed the one with the word basketball printed across the top and flipped through the pages, thinking of my deceased father. He'd played center for the Manhattan College, then spent 30 years as a high school basketball coach. Every year, Dad and I tried to predict which team would win the NCAA title. This year, I'd fill in the tournament brackets with friends. But without Dad around, I wasn't all that interested in following the series. I turned another magazine page. A familiar face looked out at me from a photograph. Then I saw the caption, "Ed O'Connor, my father as a young player." "That's my dad," I shouted. "No kidding," the shopkeeper said. "Take it home, no charge." That year the team I'd picked won the championship title. Dad, my real champion, would have been proud. By Elaine O'Connor from Spring Valley, New York. And the last story in this book is Ginger Ale on the House. Family celebrations were a top priority for my husband, John. Unfortunately, John was too ill to celebrate when our grandson Johnny turned 21. "Well, postpone the party until next year," Johnny said over the phone. "Tell Pop we'll have plenty of ginger ale for him." When we went out to restaurants, Pop never ordered anything else. Sadly, John didn't make it through another year. He passed away not long after the phone call. 1 year later, the family met at a restaurant for Johnny's 22nd birthday. We reminisced about John while the waitress brought our drinks. After everyone had been served, an extra glass remained on the tray. "Who ordered ginger ale?" she asked. The family exchanged glances. No one had ordered ginger ale. John was with us, celebrating in spirit. By Mary McWilliams from Southampton, New Jersey. He had ordered the ginger ale. If you guys can hear that noise in the background, I don't know if you can or not. It's pretty loud. It's Dottie coughing. She's got a real bad cough again. I think it's my fault from feeding her candy again. Because it seems like when she eats a lot of candy, she gets that way. So I'm going to have to quit feeding her candy again, whether she whines for it or not. This video is 9 minutes. Over 9 minutes, so I'm going to read this one last story that I just now found in the book that looks really good, and then I'm going to quit before the video gets too long. It's called Ever Watchful. Who would tend my daughter's grave? Tammy and I had been friends for years, even before we started working the hospital switchboard together. I looked forward to seeing her each morning. We laughed a lot, shared all of our hopes and disappointments. And many times she was like the sister I never had. So when she told me she was moving to Heartland, Oregon, I knew I was going to miss her more than words could say. "You're going to love Oregon," I told her. "It's gorgeous. You'll be about 80 miles from where I used to live in Dallas." Of course I told Tammy about my life in Oregon years ago, and the good times and bad. The worst moment of my life had occurred while I was living there. My young daughter Dana passed away. I had 3 sons to comfort me, but you never completely get over the loss of a child. Tammy understood completely, and I could see in her face that she knew I was thinking about Dana now. "If we ever drive through the Dallas, I'll stop off and visit Dana's grave for you," Tammy promised. That evening, as I drove home, my thoughts were with Dana. We'd moved out of state soon after she died. In the 25 years since, I'd only been back once, and that was to check on Dana's grave. The headstone was simple, with a short prayer and Dana's name carved into it. I bought a little ceramic angel holding a bird in a store in town and set it on the grave. It was my way of asking the angels to watch over Dana's resting place, since I couldn't. I wondered if the little angel and the bird was still there. Immediately I realized how silly the notion was. Of course it wasn't still there. My pilgrimage to Dana's grave was almost 25 years ago. Maybe the real angels are still watching over her, I thought. Tammy and I stayed busy at work preparing for her departure, and then she was gone. I was lonely on the first day without her at work. I pictured her taking in Oregon's beautiful landscape, settling into a new house, going to Dana's grave. I put the thought out of my mind. It was sweet of Tammy to say she'd visit, but the Dallas were miles from Portland. The angels were watching over Dana, I reminded myself, weren't they? About 6 weeks after Tammy left, she sent an email. "Guess who I spent some time with yesterday," she said. I couldn't imagine who she might have run into in Oregon days. I scrolled down to find out. We took a long drive and passed through Dallas. We stopped at the cemetery, even though it was closed. There were thousands of graves and no one to help us. I was sure we'd never find Dana. My husband and I said a prayer for help, and we got out of the car. We went one way, and I went the other. It took only exactly 10 steps to find Dana's grave. I attached some pictures for you. I looked at the pictures and couldn't believe what I saw. There was the little ceramic angel with the bird right there. I'd left it 25 years ago. Did I need any more proof that angels were watching over my girl? "Tammy," I typed back, "would you believe I put that statue on Dana's grave 25 years ago? It's not even properly attached, and yet the statue remains. It makes my heart feel good that the angels are ever watchful." "But there was no angel on the grave," Tammy wrote back. "We brought the angel for Dana." It seemed impossible. Of all the angel statues out there in the world, my friend had chosen the same one I had. And all these years later, I didn't need proof the angels were watching over my daughter, but God had given it to me anyway. How amazing is that? 25 years ago, she got an angel statue with a bird and put it on her daughter's grave, and 25 years to the day, her friend gets the exact same statue that she'd never seen before and takes it and puts it on her daughter's grave for her. Only God could do something like that. That is fate right there. Okay guys, this video is over 14 minutes. I'm so sorry about that. I promised you guys I wouldn't make these long. So I'm going to get off here and end the videos for today. I love you guys so much. I'll see you tomorrow with tomorrow's Bible readings and maybe some more stories. I hope you guys have a good rest of the evening and night. And I'll see you tomorrow, God willing. I love you guys. Let's bring those souls to Jesus. Bye guys.